There are scores of homeless in the immediate area sleeping in a variety of places. But when you ask most people about the homeless, they think about this island right here at the entrance to Walmart on Route 1. While signs have been erected prohibiting panhandling at this site, those that did have relocated to entrances to other box stores in town. Are there really homeless people here in North Attleboro? And are the people you see asking for help truly homeless? Those are just two of the topics we'll explore in this edition of North TV Reports, The Homeless Among Us. Stephen Wright is the outreach coordinator for the Attleboro Area Interfaith Collaborative and works closely with the homeless throughout the area.
They are invisible. If you go down to a larger city like Providence or you go down to Taunton, you'll be able to see the characteristics, what people think are homeless. People with carts or people with their belongings all underneath the underpass. But in the cities up here, what you'll find is that they're still visible to me. I see them all the time, but to regular people, they're invisible. They don't want to see them, to be honest with you.
I think that people have a perception that belongs to Attleboro or Boston or some of the larger cities. They don't realize that their next door neighbor may be going through financial issues and winds up losing their home for whatever reason, job-related, illness, things like that. We see it here at the office. A lot of times we get contacted, but no, I really don't think people realize the extent and that it is in our community.
There's some really great people that just have terrible stories to tell, that took a wrong turn at the wrong time or just got involved in the situation that they shouldn't have, but they're really good people. I know people that have degrees in finance, but they still live outside. People that have gone to Brown, they're outside. People that have a lot of good interest.
It's not uncommon to see panhandlers holding signs stating that they are homeless veterans. While there's no way to prove the individuals are veterans, or even homeless for that matter, the sad truth is that there are people who served our country in dire straits with no place to call home.
I think it's shocking. I think, just like you said, when you go to the larger communities and you see the veterans with their signs, and it's almost like an expectation that you see those signs as they're holding them, and you become almost numb to it. But when it's in your own community, it's very shocking for someone to come to a realization that they have veterans in their community that are truly homeless. Here in North Attleboro, we have had, in the last year, we've had 6 cases of homeless veterans. And these are folks that are just living out of their vehicle. How it's defined as a veteran homeless, whether they're homeless or not, there's different definitions, but I mean, if they're not residing somewhere and they're hopping from couch to couch, then they're truly homeless. And we've worked with, like I said, 6 cases in the last year alone. So it is in our area.
There's a number of reasons why, and they're their own, and they have a right to be wherever they really choose to be. But they struggle with a lot of things that people don't understand. PTSD is probably one of the biggest things, but the idea is they don't trust the government. They want to be independent. They want to do it the way they want to do it, basically. They don't think that they really need help. They can get by. They have skills that they could use. But there is a lot of veterans that are out there, and the veterans are being taken care of quite well by a lot of different programs. But there's a whole category of ones that are out that don't want, don't need, or at least they don't think they need services.
Homelessness can happen to anyone. for a variety of reasons at any time.
If you don't think you could be homeless, you're wrong. Because most people don't, they live day to day, or they live week to week, or paycheck to paycheck. And if you were sick for any length of time, or you lost your health insurance, and it can really turn on you really pretty quickly.
You see a lot of what they call couch surfing. Tends to be singles. They lost a job. Usually what's happened is that they have had a job and they've lost a job. They can't afford their apartment. They don't have the resources. They don't have the money to have a deposit to put towards another apartment, even if they have a job. Because some of them do have a job, but because of finances, they can no longer afford an apartment. I probably see more of that type of situation, and it's usually a circumstance like illness, like I mentioned, job loss, something, a crisis that happens, and they've been living just on the line. They don't have any extra in the bank. They have no buffer that can help them get through the crisis.
Was in business, successful, lost the job, got sick, was operated on 4 or 5 times that same year, lost my insurance. It can go really bad really quick for a lot of people. Thankfully, I had a good support system and people that could help me out. But if you don't have that, I mean, where would I be? Part of the reason I started to go into the soup kitchens and find out it was because I needed to go to the soup kitchens. That I was taking veterans benefits, that I needed services, that I needed to go to the food pantry. Not wanted to, needed to. So at some point, you have to swallow your pride and you have to fill out the forms and you have to sit in the seat. And I'm saying, don't wait till you get sick, don't wait till you have real trouble. Go and sit in the seat when you can make a difference.
Unfortunately, one of the scenarios that I've seen too often is usually it's a divorce. This is when it's homes. I will have someone very distraught. There's been a divorce. The mortgage is too high. They can't keep up the payments. Their ex is not willing to, and so the home is going to be foreclosed. And they know that it's going to happen. And so they get referred by a friend or some of the agencies to try to find out what can they do, where can they go.
There's other ones too. You can imagine somebody's house burns down, they're in a temporary shelter. Foster care, child's from foster care. And so what we have anywhere from 60 to 70 this year, students who fall under homeless that go to school and reside in North Attleboro. Some go to school in North, or some get shipped out to other schools across Massachusetts. And those rides for children can range anywhere from 15 minutes to about an hour to get them to and from their locations they need to go to.
Substance abuse is also a reason for homelessness, but not to the degree that most people think.
If somebody peddling drugs and they have it spiked with something that they shouldn't have, they have a regular route and they're going to different areas, and you'll find that happens. Their hearts can explode. They're in crisis right away.
A huge problem that we have that in the military, unfortunately, is drugs. No one really wants to talk about it, but it's certainly addiction that many of our veterans are trying to use substance abuse as a way to help them deal with some of the traumatic events that they experience in the military.
There is a misnomer that the majority of homeless people living on the streets are addicts or have mental health issues. There are many families without those issues with no roofs over their heads.
Let me tell you about a homeless person that had children.
Okay.
They were in a vehicle, staying in their vehicle, and in the rest stop, and that's where they stayed, and that's where the mother got the children ready for school. But the mother got the children to school every day. Somehow, some way, got them food. Maybe not the best food, not something that you'd want to serve your children, having McDonald's every day or something, but she made sure that they were ready for school. It's kind of it's remarkable how resilient some people can be and how much they take care of their children. But there's the opposite too, where the children are completely neglected.
Believe it or not, we had a veteran that was married with 2 children. And we had to get them into a transitional housing. And that's the thing, is you automatically think that it's you have that Vietnam veteran holding that sign. But believe it or not, it's young kids too, 20, 25 years old. Homelessness hits all sorts of walks of life, all populations, all ages. It's just they're not able to deal with whatever they're trying to cope with.
Public school systems are required by law to transport children who are deemed homeless. That number represents 1.5% of all students attending schools in North Attleboro. School Superintendent Scott Holcomb explained the law and cited an example.
Law was passed called McKinney-Vento, Homeless Education Act, passed years and years ago. And I believe it's a federal law that translates into mass law and legislation passed that says that any student who's termed homeless has to be educated. Now, let's first define the word, what homeless entails. I think people think stereotypically that there's somebody in a car, sleeping in a car out in the cold. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It could be somebody who's displaced from their house. I can make up a couple scenarios for you to make people understand it better. Let's say there was some domestic abuse that took place, a husband against a wife, or a wife against a husband, and the Department of Children and Families comes in and says, you two need to leave this house, meaning the child and mother. You have to leave. DCF's going to get involved. They're going to put them up in a temporary shelter, or in the case they might be living with one of their relatives. Well, let's say one of those relatives happens to live in North Attleboro. That mom and the child are now termed to be homeless. And if they're homeless but they came from another town, maybe it was Taunton, then that child has the right to still attend the school that they came from, which is back in Taunton. And so what our school system has to do is provide transportation. They work on that with Taunton Public Schools, where they would pick the child up at their residence in North Attleboro and drive them back to Taunton to attend the school that they came from, they were displaced from. And that's going to cost money. The state anticipates how much money it's going to cost a year in advance, and then school systems at the end of the year would put in for reimbursement for that transportation.
There actually is that, and sometimes it actually is probably more that they're homeless and they're housed in New Bedford and Fall River, and then transportation is needed to bring them to the school here. They try to do a continuity of education. It's hard enough for kids being out of their homes. It's really such a challenging thing for anyone, and when there's children involved, it's more heart-wrenching.
But the numbers everybody would be shocked.
So there's no limitation within the Commonwealth of how far a student can be transported. There's suggested guidelines of how long the ride should be for somebody. That's best practice. But their theory is that the student will one day return to their home school. So if they were removed from, say, North Attleboro and housed down the Cape because they don't have a place to be, and they're driving back to North, they hope that one day they'd be reunited and live permanently in North Attleboro. And so it does happen, and the distance dictates cost. And so we try to do it at the lowest cost possible by using some of our own fleet of buses that we have if they're close enough. Other times we have to source them out. Sometimes it's through taxi cabs that you have to pay for. Sometimes it's through a company called Vanpool. There's all different ways we try to get the students to where they need to be, but it all depends on our fleet. And so what we're looking at is possibly increasing our fleet of small buses that we have to handle this situation, because financially it might be in our best interest to do it that way and pay ourselves the money from reimbursement from McKinney-Vento, from the state and from the federal government, versus paying another company like, a transportation company. Yeah, so it's one of those things that we try to predict it because it's changing. Some years are over 100. Yeah. So again, too, we try to predict it and forecast it, but it's difficult. The idea that the state and federal government said is that you're supposed to get 100% reimbursement. Supposed to. That's the key word. What happens is, I told you in advance that they said they're going to predict how much money they're going to need to supply transportation and food and whatnot for the homeless population in all towns across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But those are based on last year's numbers. And so what could happen, and it's happened in the past to towns across the Commonwealth, is that all of a sudden the state as a whole has many more students that qualify as homeless. And they're going to try to get reimbursement of that pot of money after the year is over to backfill the cost that towns have paid. Well, there's been years before we've only received 60% reimbursement instead of 100%. And then that falls in your local budget to cover the gap on that time. And then you can petition the state for additional monies if that does occur. So sometimes you get the 100%, sometimes you get the 60%, but that then cuts into your monies that you're using to educate all students within North Attleboro.
That's not to say every person holding a sign seeking donations is homeless. I asked Stephen Wright specifically about the people asking for help on Route 1 in North Attleboro.
Those people are interesting. They come in in a caravan, and they have vehicles up in the parking lot, and they rotate, taking different turns at collecting money. It's a place where they can make $50, $60 a day, just with their signs and the sympathy of people that are driving by. We've researched them. We can't find their camps. We don't know where they live if they are in that area. We've been told that they've been behind certain areas, but we can't find their camps.
There are some cases where they are, and that's what's so difficult and really bothers me the most, is that there are true needy people out there, and there are truly some people that need some cash, maybe to get some food or to get themselves to the next spot. It's separating them from those that this is their job, panhandling. I know of a couple of cases. We had one case where there was a woman and there was a kid, and there was a big concern. And so we did talk with the different agencies and with the police, and it turned out the person was well known to them, was actually out of state, and was someone that did this on a regular basis.
If you could make $60 a day for 5 days and then give that money to a charity, it'd be over $15,000. What are they doing with it if they are really homeless, if they don't have any utilities or they don't have any expenses whatsoever other than what they want to spend their money on? You'd find that they'd be spending an awful lot of money on alcohol or drugs.
I talked to the police department. I was like, because it really bothered me to see the people that didn't need it, or who more than likely did not.
They're scamming people.
Right, they are. They truly are. There are those who are. And they said, unless the, say Walmart, we've already said Walmart, say Walmart wants to have them trespass, call them for trespassing. There's nothing the police can do.
There is assistance available for those who are truly homeless, but agencies need to know.
Usually it's a private citizen, someone who will call me up and say, I'm really upset. I saw somebody that I know they were sleeping in their car at Walmart or Stop and Shop. I know that they were there. What can we do? Because they don't know where can we go, what could be offered to someone who is living in that kind of situation. They're hoping that there's some solution that would just take care of it.
Most of the veterans, I would say 4 of the 6 veterans, they were walk-ins, like literally walked into my office and said, I'm homeless. And that's when we immediately step in, and within a couple of days we get them into short-term housing. But there is transitional housing available. But the first step is to call my office.
There is very little help locally as far as North Attleboro. The only assistance that is available are those that are provided by the churches, St. Vincent de Paul Society, that may be able to help somebody stave away homelessness, or may put them up in a motel for a couple of days.
In this area, for Bristol County, you call 1-800-HOMELESS, and I'm going to give you the the actual digits at some point. And they'll take an interview. They'll interview you, ask you a lot of questions, and then you have a rating. And then you're put on basically on a list. If they have something for you right away, someplace, they'll get you there. The thing is if you call from 508 or 774 number, they'll take the call, and you're eligible just because you have that area code. You might call from Attleboro or North Attleboro, but they may not have anything here. You might have to go to another city, whatever that is, so that you can get housing. And most important is that it's housing for people, not housing for people and their pets and people and this and different situations. It's really, we're trying to take care of the need, the immediate need, and let the other things go by the wayside.
Andrea Cadle is volunteer coordinator at the area's only shelter, known as a warming center, the Faith Alliance Church in Attleboro. There are limitations when it can be open and the number of people served.
Generally, if the forecast is for 4 inches or more of snow, or if the temperature, including wind chill, is 15 degrees or less, we will open. There's a level of educated guess that has to take place because we need to know in the morning to give us enough time to schedule our volunteers for the evening. So Sue is the one who would make that call, Sue Smith. She's our director, and she would contact me when she deemed it necessary, and then I would get to work calling the volunteers. No, most of them are living outside, and they do live back behind Sensata in the woods. There have been a couple times where the police have brought someone to us that needed a place to stay, but the majority are the ones who are a part of our community, but they're living outside in tents in the woods.
The church is mandated by the city of Attleboro on how long they can stay open, which may be difficult for people living outside in the woods.
Yeah, there was a number of nights in a row, and that's really what the problem is, because there's criteria that the city puts on the warming center, how long they can be open in any one day, and then how many days of the year, and when they have to shut down and can't have any shelters after that. And it's only really for, excuse me, for cold weather and for a heavy snowstorm. It's not for rain. Like if we look at yesterday, which would you rather be out in the snow or when it's raining, as hard as it was yesterday?
Oftentimes, the ability for opening and closing of the shelter has a lot to do with the buses. Sue has coordinated with the GATRA to get passes for the homeless to be able to get here, because we have a stop that's right about probably 100 yards down the street from here. So we basically will make sure we open before the roads close, and we'll close when the roads open. And there have been probably in the 4 years, I would say maybe 6 nights where we've had to be open for anywhere between 15 and 36 hours.
The cities have to agree to for the churches to have dual uses in their buildings. And there's a lot of rules that they have to adhere to. And whatever the city puts on as rules, and if you want to have a warming center, that's what you have to do.
Unfortunately, because of the ministries that we have running here at church, we cannot be open on Thursday or Sunday night. And so there have been times where a guest wasn't necessarily aware that we weren't open that day, and they will just kind of show up at the door at 5:30. That has happened, not very often, but it happened a time or two. It has become part of the winter culture for some of them.
There are many ways the average resident can help.
One is to advocate with your senators and your representatives to say, it's tragic that in our communities we have this situation, that there isn't a program that people could go into that might be able to assist someone temporarily, and then get them into housing. You say housing. There isn't a lot of housing out there. But that's one way, is to advocate. We need that. People, they need to hear that this is something people are concerned about. Support those agencies that legitimately help those that are homeless. Fund the St. Vincent de Paul's, fund the Faith Alliance, those that help those in need. That's a good place to help out, and certainly make referrals or advocate. I think being an advocate for affordable housing is probably one of the best things.
If you start with service, there's 6 soup kitchens. Start with the soup kitchens and just go in and don't serve the people. Go in and sit down with the people. If you have a food pantry, go into the food pantry and sit down and apply to get a bag of groceries. And see what it feels like to sit in the room and fill out the application and how it makes you feel, whether it makes you feel good, feel bad, feel down, because that's what the people are experiencing when they come in there. So if you want to then work in the food pantry, you'll have that experience of knowing what it feels like for the first time to be in there. Or you'll have the experience that you know that these people have these dietary problems and they just can't eat some of the food that's at the pantry. It's just not we have a society that that eats different things. If we have whether it's Spanish or it's Arabic or whatever, everybody can't have the same diet. And we kind of like say, here's what we have, this is what you got to do. And people can change that if they just look at it and want to change that. But getting out into your neighborhoods, into the service areas, find out who's doing the work. Then you can make up your mind what you want to do as an individual. But as long as you stay and go to work every day and come back and work on your own problems or your own lawn, or you'll never get it. You'll never understand. You'll go by the people all the time. You'll never know all those people were hurting. You'll hear stories of your neighbors having troubles. You'll never understand, how hard it is to have somebody that you really love that's going off the rails and is doing things that you really wish they wouldn't do, and that you had aspirations for them to do greater things. The thing is that you have to find your way into service somehow, some way. The soup kitchens are a great place to get started, but don't go in with any preconceived notions, because you'll be all wrong. You'll be proven wrong.
The best way would be to contact the church, and we could get their information to Sue Smith, because she is our director. We provide the facility, but she manages the administration with the city and with volunteers. So she would be the one to contact for signing up to be a volunteer.
We're busy people, and we're interested in our own lives. And when we see these things, we just don't associate with it. We just don't see. But there are people in the community that are associating themselves with these kinds of problems. And part of the conversations that we had before was, don't support the people at the mall looking for a donation on the spot, and because you had a good day or a bad day, whatever, or you feel sorry for them, you do that. Start looking at it as supporting the people that support the people in your own city with these problems. And if you look, you'll find that people are supporting, whether it's from this office or from many offices. This is just not the only place that would help, but you can help. You can make a big difference with helping the people that help the people that have these problems. I'd like to think that people would get really involved. I would hope that people would look around and realize that in their communities there's people that need help. Unless their city doesn't have drugs, unless their city doesn't have alcoholics, if they don't have all these other things that are going on, then they're fine. But I'm telling you that they do.